Hey everyone, Synth Future here, and I'm back. Yes, I've been away for a little while, had some voice issues to deal with, but I think we're back and ready to get back into looking at some VSTs, shall we? So, just to start off easy, we're going to look at two multiband, multi-FX VSTs. Like, you got to ease into things when you start doing things again. So I thought, why not? Let's do something nice and easy to start off with. So today we're going to take a little look at Unfiltered Audio TRIAD and Kilohearts MultiPass. Why these two VSTs? Well, once you start to look at multiband multi-FX VSTs, there isn't all that much choice. Like, you pretty much have these two guys. You have Melda Production. Melda Production has the MXXX tool at a whopping $999, or no, not even, euros, which is pretty well above my budget, to be very honest. I'm not that rich, right? This channel might make you believe differently, but no, that's well above my budget. And aside from that, there's a few small brands, but most multi-FX are not multiband. So not that much choice out there, really. But that's good, because that makes comparison a little bit easier. Small side note, as per usual, I am working with the Unfiltered Audio beta team. That being said, I did buy this plugin before I got on their team, and I also paid for it with my own money. So yeah, this is my plugin, and I'm going to be as harsh and brutal as I want to be about it, which isn't really all that harsh and brutal, because it's quite fun. But we're getting ahead of things. So let's talk about these two VSTs, and let's just start off with the boring stuff. And that's just the specs, so to speak. So I do want to remind people that most of these plugins will go on sale eventually, but I like to talk about the pricings, the sticker pricings, to judge them about as fairly as we can, because with sales it's pretty much impossible. So TRIAD weighs in at 299 euros, which is quite hefty, especially if you compare to Kilohearts, which is only 99 euros, which makes you wonder what's going on there. And this has everything to do with the Kilohearts business model, which I have made a lengthy video about, which I will link somewhere in here. Well, I'll just put it in the middle of the screen or something. But essentially what Kilohearts does, it sells their hosts separately from their plugins. So if you decide to buy the 99 euro package for MultiPass, you will get a total of 6 effects included. And these are about the most basic effects you can find. It's an equalizer, chorus, delay, gain, limiter, and stereo. So I would say 99 euros, not really. To actually get a little bit of use out of this effect, you are going to need at least the starter package, which is priced at 198 euros, at which point you get 12 effects. And if you really want to spice it up, you can go for the professional package at 348 euros, at which case you get 30 effects. Now TRIAD is nice and simple. TRIAD just has 40 effects. Over 40 effects. I forgot to count them, but it's over 40. So there's quite a big difference there. Now, the catch with Kilohearts is that if you already own a Kilohearts product, you probably already own some effects, and these effects translate into MultiPass. So your pricing will be modular, I think is the best word. So it's a little bit hard to talk about pricing, but let's just assume you want everything. You are looking at a roughly 50 euro price difference between TRIAD and professional, all weird caveats and sales. So what more do we need to talk about? We need to talk a little bit about how many bands these effects have, because they are multi-band. In TRIAD, you get a total of 3 bands. Nice and straightforward. You can also choose for 2 bands. You can do parallel processing in 3 bands or 2 bands. You get mid-side processing, and you get left-right processing. On the other hand, in multipass, a little bit more conservative with the weirdness, you just get 5 bands, which is 2 more than TRIAD. But you don't get all the parallel and mid-side stuff. You do get, however, a pre and a post effects, which works on all bands. That's a pretty nice addition. In TRIAD, you get 15 mod slots with a nice selection of modulators. You can choose between sequencers, modifiers, envelopes, and you have some analysis stuff. In Kilohearts, you get a total of 5 modulators, which are pretty much fixed. 2 LFOs, 2 envelopes, pitch, and MIDI. So a little bit more limited there. Now, one of the fun things with multipass is that you can actually put multipasses in MultiPass or SnapHeap, and SnapHeap is their free single band host. So you can effectively add more LFOs and envelopes by putting a SnapHeap into one of the lanes like this. And in here, you can put whatever effect you want. You can actually edit it like it's a normal SnapHeap. And the fun thing is that the macros will actually appear in MultiPass, which is pretty cool. So you can actually add some macros and they will appear in MultiPass as well. So this does allow for some extra space to dive a little deeper, because you can, of course, in this snap heap, add another snap heap if you want, and you can pretty much create a rabbit hole of effects. The limit, of course, being both your processing power and well, your organizational skills, really, because this goes pretty deep. And these LFOs and stuff are, as far as I know, not linked if they are in free running mode. So that's a little bit tricky. It's an interesting option to put snap heaps and multipasses into multipass for multipassception. TRIAD will give you a total of 30 macros, which you can bind to all the controls you want, and you can quite easily set these up to your MIDI controller, for instance. So that's pretty cool. In the Kilohearts outing, you're going to have to work with a total of 8 of these macros, which in all fairness is still generally enough. You also get auto band splitting in TRIAD, where it will snap to the spectral thingies. So it will try to nicely change the bands according to intensity, and you can make this dynamic as well. No such thing in multipass. And you get a few additional interesting things, like, for instance, this sample rate control, which you won't find in multipass. You get a little bit more control in the randomization, because you have a nice little randomizer button here, and you can set which controls you want to lock with a right click, and you can randomize all the other parameters to your liking, which is a pretty interesting thing to just sometimes when you have a nice setup, just throw in a little bit of randomization. You can also set how deep it is and which parts you want to randomize. So that's pretty cool. You do get some randomization in multipass, but it's on a per effect level. So you can randomize one effect, for instance, but not everything. Of course, very important in multipass is you get Snake, so you can actually play Snake if you ever get bored. So yeah, that's the 2 contestants, so to speak. I mean, there's not really competition here because both of these are absolutely excellent. But let's just dive a little bit deeper into UI, UX, and why you would probably be interested in multiband effects at all. So let's take one step back and let's start with what are multiband effects. So what a multiband effect effectively does is it splits your sound source into several independent bands. And to give you a little bit of an audio demonstration of that, this is Excellent Audio XO, ran through TRIAD. Sounds a little like this. Basic little beat, and now we can turn on just the low band, for instance. Or just the mid band. Or just the high band. And the fun thing is we can put processing on just one of these bands. So for instance, I have a little stutter delay thing going on here, which I can activate on the high band. So this is what happens to the high band. The mid-band and the low-band are unaffected by all these high-frequency stutter thingies. Now, this isn't the only way to use a multi-band effect. You can also use it for parallel compression or multi-band compression. You can use it to, for instance, add a little bit of dirt and grit or saturation to the low frequencies, but not to the mid and high frequencies, or the other way around. You can use it to cut off reverbs, so only apply reverbs to higher frequencies and not to the low frequencies. Creative stuff like this, delays on certain frequencies, stutters, and all sorts of interesting stuff. So it's both a sound design creative tool, but it can also be used as a problem-solving tool. And there's actually quite a few presets you will find in these tools. So just take a look at MultiPass to balance things out. But for instance, you have some mixing things here with de-essers, compressors, mastering saturation, but there's also in the dynamics equalizers that work on specific frequency ranges, but also rhythmic chopping, reverbs and distortions. So it can be pretty much used for everything. Now I do find myself personally not really using multiband that often, just because it's a little bit more of a hassle to work with, because you have to think more about what effects go where and how you are going to balance things out. But at the same time, it's more freedom in your creative process. So that's always cool, right? So yeah, I would definitely say there's a place and a time for multiband effects. It's always good to have these tools in your toolbox. Let's do a little bit of a UI UX tour on these two. Funny enough, TRIAD works in a sort of horizontal workflow, where MultiPass works in a vertical workflow. So TRIAD just has the 3 bands here. Multiband has them going down with a pre and a post effect. And you get a visualizer in TRIAD, which you also get in MultiPass. So let's just flick them on. TRIAD has the nice little colors, and MultiPass has the boring blue line, which is a little bit of a shame. Could be a little bit more fun, I think. This is definitely a little bit nicer looking. And overall, Kilohearts tends to be a little bit on the gray side, where Unfiltered Audio definitely has a little bit more color coding and playful elements going on. Also, all the effects are actually color coded, just like Lion and Biome, which is actually pretty neat because you can quite quickly see what's going on where. So you have some filters. This is dynamic processing. This is distortion. That's delays, that's reverbs, modulation, and that's mixing tools, and that's granular. And that's the nice thing. I can click this fast through the list and still tell you exactly in which group of effects we are, where, not so much on this end. So I think that's a neat little feature in the interface of TRIAD, the color coding, and also the effects are all stacked in groups, so you can quite quickly go, I want a filter, these are my filters. Where in Kilohearts, it's a little bit more of a search operation to find all your filters, because there's filter here, there's filter there, probably missing a filter, there's the filter there. You can, of course, search filter, and if they are all called filter, you're in luck. But if you're looking for instance, modulation effects, that's not something their search engine recognizes. It's a little thing that could be, I think, a little bit better, because it's a little bit annoying constantly looking through the list for the effect you're looking for. And also I find a little bit, well, inspirational is a little bit weird maybe, but quite often when you're working with something, you don't necessarily know what you're looking for. And if you open a little list and it says modulation, your brain might spark something like, oh, modulation, that's probably what I want. So you can just go in there and grab a modulator and see how that works out. Points for TRIAD, I would say. In classic unfiltered audio fashion, you can of course resize everything nicely. You can minimize these modules into smaller modules. So once you're done setting them up, you can make them smaller. And when you make them smaller, you can still see the modulation, which is pretty neat. You can activate and deactivate entire lanes. You can collapse and open entire lanes. It's nice. You have your modulators down here, which you can make smaller and bigger. It really works in the kind of classic modular style with the cables. And the cables of one source will all have the same color, so that's pretty neat. Quick way to see what is going where. Modulators can be simply added, changed, removed, copied, randomized, whatever. So it's, I would say the UI is very nice, slick, and simple. Now it does lack a few little things that MultiPass does have. For instance, in MultiPass you can add a modulator, like for instance a bit crusher. Let's just activate it. And we can change the settings, for instance, like this. And now we can actually control click it and drag it to another lane, and it will take all these settings with it. You can also copy them down. That's pretty neat. And it actually goes as far as if you add modulation to this. There we go. And you copy it. It will actually copy the modulation as well. I think that's pretty neat. That's a nifty little function. And the guys from Unfiltered Audio know about this function. And well, maybe with an update one day, they'll get around to implementing something like this. Like they want it. Downsides of having a small team, you have to take your time, do the things that are more important first, and they might add it later. You do have some options here in the Unfiltered Audio camp. You can, for instance, copy a module, just right click it, copy the effect, and you can paste it here. Now it will take all the settings, but it won't take the modulations. So you will have to rewire it. I think the annoyance is a big word, but the most, well, let's go with annoying. The most annoying thing with this is it's a little bit hard to copy the entire effect chain to another lane. So if you want to have 3 lanes with the same effects, you really have to do some going back and forth. And at the same time, once you have it set up, that's it. And you're ready to go. So not the end of the world, but a little UX win on the side of MultiPass for that. Modulation in MultiPass, as simple as finding a modulator, which are all up here, down here, up here. And you can just click the little plus icon and all the modulatable sources will light up like a Christmas tree. You can grab any modulator, twist it to wherever you want. You can take several, you can set it to different values. For instance, like this, it'll show up here. So you can mouse over and it will highlight. And the other way around, if you go to control, it will highlight which modulator is active. So for instance, if we do this, the envelope one will highlight. If the envelope one is open, it will blink the entire screen. Very simple, double click to remove. Also very simple. They both have their pluses and minuses because even though this is pretty simple, you can just highlight and see where the modulation is going. This still gives a little bit more feedback in just in one view, being able to see that stutter is going to the comparator, for instance. If I just look at this, I would not be able to tell you where this is going. So both have their ups and downs in this field. Another thing that's worth addressing is sidechaining abilities of these plugins. Now both have a sidechain. Unfiltered Audio just calls it sidechain. On the Kilohearts side, it's called the auxiliary input. So I've set up this little pad thingy. This track is a drum, which is just playing a 4 on the floor bass drum to simulate a bass drum input. This is our pad. Simply route it into the third and fourth input of the pad track, and if we play this back, this is unfiltered audio sidechaining. So what is happening here is in the compressor you have a little sidechain thingy which you can click, and from that moment on it will take the third and fourth input into this track and use that as the sidechain signal. So we get a nice little sidechain bump. In the multipass camp, it's pretty similar actually. Here we go. Now we have a little bit of an advantage because they have a post effect, so you can just dump your... I use the gate here, you can also use a compressor if you want to. It's the same difference. Let me just throw in a compressor. Sidechain. It's the exact same thing. Now here you can use the sound of multipass itself as a sidechain, which is pretty interesting actually, because you can either use individual bands or the entire signal, and this would allow you to effectively sidechain. So this would effectively allow you to sidechain, for instance, every time a mid frequency gets louder or softer, to attenuate for that, and well, plenty of creative things if you want to, but for now let's just do the boring thing, and this is sidechaining the basic gate effect. It's simple enough. Now of course it's not a fair comparison because I'm using the compressor in TRIAD and the gate in MultiPass, so it's going to sound different, but the functionality is exactly the same, and it's a very nice to have feature. Allows you to do cool things as well, where for instance you can gate off a reverb after or when a vocalist is singing, and when the vocalist stops singing you can actually kick in the reverb or delay or creative stuff like that, which definitely big up, and both can do it, so point to everyone, full opera style. So that's our high-speed overview of both MultiPass and TRIAD, and both are absolutely great plugins with a lot of creative range. I never try to be too much a person that says you need to buy this or you need to buy that, but I still think it's interesting to talk about these plugins in a what-if scenario. What if you had money for one of these? Which one should you buy? This is a really tricky question in this case, and the main reason for this is kind of the elephant in the room, the kind of business model that Kilohearts has, because you may have noticed that all modules here are functional. So this means this is basically the full version of MultiPass, so the most expensive tier, which you can get through the subscription model, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. I have a subscription to the Kilohearts bundle, so for $10 I get access to all the modules, and after 12 months, I will get a $100 discount coupon, which I can use to probably upgrade my modules. On the other end, we have Unfiltered Audio's TRIAD, which comes with all the modules included, so you will never run into annoying screens like these, where like more than half of the modules or even all of the modules are disabled because, well, they are not disabled, where half of the modules can't be edited because you don't own them, which is pretty frustrating, to be really honest. On top of that, you can quite often get TRIAD at a pretty decent discount on the Plugin Alliance website, like it goes quite often for something like €70 or 69 or something in that area, at which price it's a hell of a lot cheaper than MultiPass, while still offering more modules, more modulators, more macros, more control over the slope and spectral snapping, but of course at the cost of having less bands and no pre and post effects. So where do these land? I would say between these two, in general, I tend to be drawn a little bit more to TRIAD, because TRIAD just has more madness. I think that's a good description. where Kilohearts keeps it pretty clean and normal. It's a weird way to say, but all the modules are very traditional. You have filters, you have distortion, and you have some modulation stuff. But in the Unfiltered Audio camp, you also get granulators, which are pretty cool stutter effects, which are very interesting. And that's just stuff that's completely missing. Creative reverbs. And you get more control in your modulators. You can do some pretty interesting stuff with modulators modulating modulators. For instance, you can add modulators, you can just detract modulators and all that sort of stuff, because basically the modular interface is the same as Biome and Lion. So it's very versatile, where Kilohearts kind of locks you into these preset things, which is weird, because in Faceplant they let you use as many modulators as you want, and you actually get a lot more creative freedom. And that's something I think is kind of lacking in MultiPass. It makes MultiPass more utilitarian, where TRIAD is more creative freedom and unfiltered chaos, which is very cool. It's the unpredictability of the beast adds to it. I would say they both have strengths and weaknesses. And I think it's very important to try for yourself to see which system fits you best. And for that, I would advise you to just try it on Plugin Alliance. You can just download the demo for free. I think you can demo it for 14 days or something without any restrictions. So that's pretty awesome. On the MultiPass camp, it's a little bit less easy, but you could just start a subscription for $10. You get access to everything. So you can just try out MultiPass and also Faceplant and Snap Heap, I think they call it. They call it Snap Heap. Yeah, Snap Heap. There you go. Just give it a shot and see what works best for you. So that's of course always the best thing to do, but at least I hope this video gives you a little bit of an idea of where these effects compare, where they are different, and why you might want to pick one over the other. So that's the video for today, and hopefully a little bit more activity here in the upcoming days. Let's see how things go. For now, I wish you a great day and see ya.